Hello there, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we want to look at an essay question from the question paper of Term 3, September 2024. And this is a question paper from the Limpopo province. So we move to the question that we have. We are going to look at the question of uh, business ventures, whereby it reads, start a business venture based on an action plan. So this is the information that we are given. So there's information that you need to read before you start to answer the question. And then, of course, in terms of the requirements of the question, it reads, write an essay on starting a business venture based on an action plan in which you include the following. And of course, you have to outline the reasons why businesses need funding, and then explain the aspects that must be considered when initiating a business. Discuss the following factors that must be considered before startup, that is customer services, business growth, culture of the organization. And on the additional part, this is the additional part, we are going to briefly discuss the factors that influence the choice of funding. So basically, that's what we have. And obviously, this is this is an essay, so you're supposed to start with your introduction. So according to your introduction, you can define any key term that you see in the question as an alternative method of coming up with your introduction. So remember, we are having action plan uh, inside our essay. And action plan, basically, we are saying it's a document that lists what steps must be taken to achieve a specific goal. So basically, it breaks down the goal into actionable steps that can be easily followed and tracked. So basically, that is what we have in terms of the description of an action plan. So basically, it shows what we are supposed to do and where we are supposed to go. So this is basically a typical introduction that we can come up with according to the essay that we have in question. So going to the main part now, we start to answer the question according to the main part, whereby the first part you outline reasons why business need funding. So obviously, funding is going to be the basis of whatever is going to transfer in that organization, because everything that needs to be done needs to be funded. Every activity needs money so that it goes forward. So that is the funding that is needed. So in terms of reasons why business need funding? These are the reasons that we have to cover the startup cost of buying premises, machinery, raw materials, etc. To run the business and have enough money to pay employees or suppliers of raw materials. Of course, the raw materials are the ones that are going to be used to manufacture the product. And obviously, for them to be acquired, we need to buy them. Money is needed, so funding is needed. And also the employees that are going to produce, and also obviously the suppliers. Suppliers are the ones that are going to give us the raw materials and other products or goods that might be needed in the manufacturing processes or in whatever is needed in that business. And then also pay the cost of input such as wages, telephone, and other expenses. Expand the business as the orders or sales increase and bigger premises need to be established. And of course, the business is going to expand. When it expands, obviously it needs funding so that the expansion is funded. So basically, that's what we have on that part. And then we move on to the next part, whereby we have to explain the aspects that must be considered when initiating a business. What are the aspects to be considered when you are starting a business? So we are supposed to have a strategy. A strategy is a plan of action that must be carried out by an entrepreneur. So a strategy is the one that guides you in terms of achieving your goals. Systems and processes should be in place for the business to achieve its goals. A business must ensure that strategies such as marketing, management, public relations are implemented and continuously reviewed. So this is what we have on that part. And then we also have to have we also supposed to have operations as an aspect that must be considered when initiating a business, whereby we are saying businesses must implement the activities that are outlined in the action plan. Operations need to be implemented, staff must be employed and trained, and also resources must be acquired and managed continuously. So this is what we have in terms of operations as an aspect that must be considered when initiating a business. So we also have on the next part we have productivity has to be also considered when initiating a business. Whereby we are saying productivity is the effectiveness of production in terms of the rate of output per unit of input. So what output is being, what output are we getting from the input that we are incurring? So that is productivity. Businesses must ensure that there is a higher rate of productivity in all aspects of in all aspects of its operations, and ensure that costs are decreased and outputs are increased to maximize profits. And of course, we have to make sure that we decrease the cost or expenses that we are incurring as much as possible, so that we widen the gap between the revenue that we are going to receive and the costs that we are going to incur. Then the profit margins are widened. So basically, that's what we have. And then also an aspect that has to be taken into consideration is the size of the business. How big is our business? Business must decide on the most appropriate size for successful operations. So we have to make sure that the size of the business is appropriate according to the business that we are operating and the funding that we have. Because if we do not align those factors, we are going to make losses, and we obviously cease operating. Then we've got the bigger the business, the more difficult it is to manage. Something that is to be taken into consideration, that it doesn't have just to be big, but are we able to manage the size? If it's big, is also of greater importance. And the success of the business is often dependent on the management and the staff. It may be difficult to keep control of the quality of work and productivity levels of employees. So this is the factor that we have. And then on the next part of our essay, we have to discuss the following factors that must be considered before startup. We've got customer services, business growth, culture of the organization. So on that one, factors that must be considered before startup, we are looking at those that we have we have got culture of the organization. So the culture of the organization is the personality of a company. The company's culture is a combination of its vision, values, work environment, internal behavior. Entrepreneurs must decide what the culture of the business will be before starting up. So culture basically is the way of doing things in that business. What is going to be the routine of doing things in that business becomes the culture. They must train their staff to know the culture of the business. For example, dress code is part of the culture. How do we dress in that business is something that has to be followed from time to time, and it becomes a culture. And then also the customer service. So how do we make sure that we receive our customers, and how do we take care of our customers? Explains the customer service. So they must ensure that the staff knows the culture of the business, and that their behavior does not damage the business image. So that is one of the factors that must be considered before startup. We also have customer service as a factor. A good customer service requires entrepreneurs to um, identify their potential customers before startup, establish a good relationship with their customers, change the market plan to accommodate customer needs. And also, if with business growth as a factor to be taken into consideration, the entrepreneur must determine the size and the growth of the business before they start up. Devise a suitable strategy to manage and control a larger group of people of employees. The size and growth of the business will determine the most form of ownership of the business. And then also, many businesses want to grow quickly, and which can cause problems such as a lack of infrastructure and funding. So basically, that's what we have on that part. We also have the last point: long-term vision of the size of the size of the business must also be reflected in the organogram of the business. Remember, the organogram is at the diagram that shows the levels of authority that organization who reports to who, and which worker is at the top, who manages who in terms of the superiors and the subordinates are outlined in the organogram, starting from the CEO, if the CEO is at the top of that business, and then obviously going down to the lowest worker, if the general worker is at the lowest in that organization or business. So that is business growth. So with that, I will move on to the next aspect, which now is risk as a factor to be taken into consideration again. That is the bank or venture capitalists will always consider how safe their investment will be by looking at factors that will endanger the recovery of the debt. So what risk is most probable to be faced in that business must also be taken into consideration, and also cost of finance. The cost of finance is normally measured in the interest rate that must be paid for the funding. So interest rates basically is the cost of borrowing. So it is at the cost of finance. So how high are the interest rates? And how difficult is it for the business to access funding due to the level of interest rates that is there, due to the cost? Is the business going to be able to repay that cost in the form of interest? So basically, that's what we have. So the business must weigh all the options before choosing the most affordable option of funding. And that is where, whenever the business is accessing or trying to look out for credit lines, they have to make sure that they choose the best credit line that offers the interest rates that they can afford, or the cost that they can afford when they want to access our funding, when they want to borrow money. So this is what we have on that part on cost of finance. Cost of finance, and this on the cost of finance, we are having also period of finance. How long is it going to take to repay any money that we are going to borrow? So how long is it also going to pay to our creditors who we are borrowing from, is also important for us to take into consideration. So in terms of a conclusion, this is a typical conclusion that we can come up with according to the essay in question. So thank you for listening, and hopefully the video was helpful. And please, let's not forget to subscribe and share to our channel. Let's share the link to our colleagues who are doing the relevant business studies. As for this video, I'm signing out. We'll meet again in the next video.